the self must lose all the hierarchical structure, because most of the titles are ego fulfilling, not integrating. Maybe for the sake of convenience, the title as coordinator, organizer, communicator, and/or cooperator are within the self required to understand how the physical body functions automatically with the self internally, is how it must learn to do the same with its external aspects that the many of its world will represent for it. This is what it means to be a healer. When climbing up a rocky mountain, it is most wise not to collect of all the heavy rocks along the way. When climbing up a rocky mountain, it is most wise not to collect of all the heavy rocks along the way. When climbing up a rocky mountain, it is most wise not to collect of all the heavy rocks along the way. Welcome. I'm so glad that you can join me here today. 233 on what is ascension, to further expand on this focal point that we might to explore and expand on further. From pages 599 to 602, from 800 and, well, the book here says 848, but it just, 200 and, so out of this book, The Sovereign Light, a course in metaphysical spirituality. And how do you do? My name is Reverend Maria Arvanites. And with that said, this book you can find anywhere. You just go online, and on page 8, you'll also see my picture on here. And as we further go along, so many pages, to reach the end, you'll see this very powerful emblem that will describe throughout the book everything that will to change and shift your perspectives and hopefully enlighten you into opening up your heart and fly, be able to use your imagination and see where it will go. the depths and heights that it will reach. And so with this said, this is, I have 9 different copies of this. This happens to be a colored hardcover, ISBN 9781999017064. For those who are interested, this is the most updated, and I keep updating it as we go along. And so, shall we begin by taking a few deep breaths in and out. And in and find your center still point. Bring your consciousness to your heart space center and find that still point. Feel yourself, that sinking in feeling all the way to your heart space. Take a few deep breaths in and feel the grounding of the mountains all around. And when you're ready, I'd like to hear you say these words out loud. And throughout the day, have it activate this thing called your reality. And from it, the circumstances that it brings for you, the opportunities to engage with further. In this way, we can to open up our pineal gland and our pituitary to bring in this union of electromagnetic, angelic strength that is viewed within internally from that creator God presence that you are when you become strong enough and empowered to accept this connection to the inner child and all the other sub-personalities that we might work through, from warrior to shaman, wise person, and nurture that mothering, nurturing, soothing presence that it brings to the inner child, that support, to promote and allow that space to create and be your authentic self, to accept that. It will take a lot of healing to become the Mother, Father, God connection, the wisdom of the Father and the creator of the inner child, and the warrior that learns to be the wise elder shaman, but for now respects the boundaries that it learns from to protect its tribe with. And we would like to work through all of these and clear them, and like all the many chakras and rainbow that these boundaries form of light to deflect and reflect into our reality. These many vortices that we might, from our pituitary gland, bring into the oneness, to the alignment, to the wholeness, and allow the surrendered trust into the synchronicity that unfolds with every moment for our own best versions of ourselves. So let us clear and just acknowledge every pebble, every rock within that knapsack that we have collected, all these many issues, all these many blocks. And I like to hear you say these words out loud for today and just open up and clear whatever it is that's binding and blocking, creating effort and struggle. When climbing up a rocky mountain, it is most wise not to collect of all the heavy rocks along the way. And just take a deep breath in. And let's say it again. When climbing up a rocky mountain, it is most wise not to collect of all the heavy rocks along the way. Take another deep breath in. And out. And really feel it, what it means for you to say these words. When climbing up a rocky mountain, it is most wise not to collect of all the heavy rocks along the way. The ego is the indicator from where the self needs to work on and to refine, either from within and or from its external environment, where the process from the many will agree for the opportunity to happen. When the opportunities are always there and the universe is always extending out to the self such miracles, the many of free will can and have every right to not allow for the self to engage with the involvement, no matter the windfall that the universe will represent to it. This is something that we've established through many generations of our lineage. How to enslave others by not allowing them to contribute, by not recognizing their contributions, by not allowing them to fit in. And what persists and resists will persist and become stronger. So think of this as a refinement experience. So the universe will always provide, but the resistance of free will from others' distortions of what they believe in and what they've agreed upon from their opinions to be compromised in their reality of what is real and what is not, and what is fact and what is not. The struggle that it creates and the need for equality and freedom and advocating and fighting and all these conflicts and struggles and effort. So this is an enslavement program. This right here, what others don't allow, when we don't allow for their rejection to come in, and they don't allow for us to contribute in the helping of others, unless our service becomes that of a slave. So there's a lot of enslavement, that you're not this identity unless you enslave yourself to prove to others that you have experience in doing something, because you've been doing it relentlessly on autopilot. So when you come out of it and not care so much about the identity that the ego mind will bring through all these filters of approval, you become authentic. You're having an experience every moment, alive and refreshing experiences. You are a spirit in this body that appears to be real and physical, having an experience, not the other way around that the inverse reality has offered to recreate and empower itself, that we allow to become enslaved by its program. So these are the things that we pick up along the way, that we collect, and what others think about us, and the reliance of others for our confidence rather than self-relying on the self and what it's capable of doing, no matter the illusion of the external and what it's telling it it can and cannot do, and have it compete with itself, constantly taking itself down into the many, many separations that it must be in conflict and competition in order to survive in this so-called identity to identify itself with, rather than having the experience moment by moment with nothing to prove and say, oh, I'm experienced at being dead, so I can provide my services within the enslavement and limitations that we argue over. What more will it take from these words, this sermon, to emerge and see from your imagination, to wake up and free yourselves? That's what it means to save yourself. No one from the outside is going to come. And yes, we get deceived by our human, animalistic you know, it's true. We get tricked a lot of the times into, let's say, our primal animalistic urges that we see in another, that they might hold it over us and enslave us with that, that we worship them as an idol rather than to see them as we see ourselves, to see in them ourselves, that part of ourselves that we're connecting with, and the relationships that we form with each other, the better versions to support and promote each other, to empower and to strengthen, to accept each other from an internal spiritual acknowledgement that we see the beauty and potential that we all oppress and allow for others to control us by disconnecting from this connection to our own inner blessings. And they become inversed, and we see them as, oh, we're cursed, oh, this and that. So see it, flip it. And from there, when the opportunities come and extend, see the many little blessings. Take them in and see how they become stronger. Just like when you don't heed the subtle warnings from something and then it hits you over the head. The same intensity with good vibrations, this frequency it has to offer. So we either ascend or descend. And when we descend, we allow others to ascend and other things that we haven't seen before, and they ascend. And when we ascend, other things descend. Just like going on a plane, it has also been expressed, this experience that we can all relate to, kind of maybe, in this book, in this novel. And as we go further into pages 600, before we do, relationships present themselves in such a way that the other's free will do not permit can only mean one thing: that the self has some inner work within its own soul to figure out, and not for someone else to come and figure it out for them, or for them to, perhaps they can see it in another and try and figure it out in them, and in this way, as a group, they can work through it as well. There's many ways of doing it. So today, look deep into the self and in the soul where the dysfunctions are, and unconsciously that will not permit from its unwanted external relationships. When climbing up a rocky mountain, it is most wise not to collect of all the heavy rocks along the way. Surely there must be a misalignment somewhere for such soulful interpretations to create enormous resistance from the collective's will to not permit these opportunities to play and play out, learn and grow from. This is where the self must not be so concerned to service others, and until those others will permit for this. And we all become divided, and then we all become like dead, the walking dead. And then we have others come in to substitute for our authentic self and presence of being there, like a digital duplicate, you know, those little cartoon characters. And how many aspects of ourselves will it take to complete whatever it is that they want, that otherwise we would have involved ourselves to engage in real time and get things done, and to have the experience with others rather than compete and argue for our limitations and fight ourselves all the way down into limiting little awkward, distorted, energetic body so that we can provide whatever it was that was resisting our services, to not allow the light to shine and that awareness to become. Because nothing really needs help, nothing really needs fixing. It's like falling in love with somebody outside of ourselves. We're not actually falling in love with that person. We are just being turned on and tapped on and activated by that person to see that part of ourselves that wasn't activated before, that now we feel that we're in love with that other person, that we idolize, that they represent that part of ourselves that they have opened up for us to see. And it feels so good. And then when that person disengages, then we form these blocks. And we think, oh, wow, you know, and we become heartbroken. The same thing goes with job opportunities, with any kind of relationships that we feel that we rely on that external source that opened us up to see it within ourselves, and how we're fixing things and how we're healing and how the energy is flowing in harmony with one another when we connect, and then how much power they have over us when they decide they disconnect from us and what they hold that we empower them with. See? And so it's kind of, you know, it's amazing. It depends from what perspective we see it from. And it really hurts because a lot of us were told how important a tribe and a family, and nothing is more valuable than the family that makes us who we are rather than the other way around. And if you don't have a family and you're just one unit, then you're easier to control and manipulate and all these other things, and be treated like the slave that we really are. And I see it. I see it when I go to work to do all these meaningless things to pay the bills, and how they hold back and deprive us all. And I see it how these people go in day and day out. They do this scheduling and they're just dead. They're dead inside, but they're doing it for their children so that their children could have the life that they never had. And to uplift that part of themselves that they procreated as you know, in a way, in some kind of a secure way of immortality, you see. And so this is where the self must not be so concerned to service others, and until those others will permit for this. Here's where the ego-fulfilling entities conspire to block the flow. It could be very possible that the many would prefer the self over any other, and yet it's this program that we all hold called duty and loyalty to others, in a false sense that we might belong to that unit, to that relationship, to that intimacy that we're getting, that otherwise we might not if we were to unclutch from that program and all the goodies it might offer, like that apple from the tree of knowledge. But, one bite, that's all it takes. And that is not how the procedure takes its course. It could be very possible that the many could and would prefer the self over any other. But their hands are tied, and there's nothing they could do. And it's common sense to not let the heart be the guide, rather the ego mind that drives its world. Just who is in control here? Sovereignty makes up for its own rules. Marching to the beat of your own drummer. People don't like that. They don't see it. How can you be a team player? How can you be in charge of a team even if you don't enslave yourself and respect the program? With these many rules, even as a lawyer, anybody who's out there who's a lawyer, you would know if you go out of your profession for a year, how much you have missed. If you don't stay up to date with all the rules and samples and examples from other people's experiences that the judgments rule on, and how they change the rules and how quickly the bylaws and rules and regulations become amended. And yet, from an outsider's point of view, how slow and lethargic moving it can be. So, when we untwist that figure 8, what is it that we get? We get a 0. Disengage. We get a 0. We get a oneness. We get a wholeness. No more splitting off into two worlds. We untwist and we relieve ourselves into the oneness, into the wholeness, into the law of the one creator being, that we can to use our electromagnetism and create from that level that we know as the law of one, and from that perspective that we use the law of attraction with. Well, you could connect the dots to what I'm saying as we move on and forward. Coming home. Ultimately, sovereignty makes up its own rules, and that of which it feels to be conducting over its presence. But first we must clear all that dharma and karma. Yeah. And this here book will help us in the many lessons that we go through each and every day. No matter how absurd, no matter how unrelating it might be. Ultimately, the responsibility is that of reintegration for this, its atonement, at one minute. For now, this concept might be way too inconceivable. The level from where it operates to function with its orders of external disconnect is right dab from the perspective of cause and effect. And with that said, the secret of the law of attraction that we've been going through, to feel. How does it feel when you say these words, when you affirm something? So we've been going at it from that level, and we've been getting little spurts and of the law of creation from that level of reality, when we can actually let ourselves go and to elevate and enlighten from a higher mind perspective. Coming home is this thing that we've always been saying, to the heart space center, is also having to clear perhaps the clutter, and do not expect it to be always empty in a way of housework. It must go through the restoration and then that of cleaning it. However, there's no order in that which linear relevance might have it play to understand. We get put in circumstances when we downsize that we have a lot of physical, like those rocks, that we've collected along the way that others might have collected for us and given it a name as inheritance, that we might have to take up our space and that energy, that flow, to be obstructed with all this clutter that we still have yet to unpack and take a look at and acknowledge, and where the usefulness might come in from these objects, these physical things that we hold on to simply because they have sentimental value, even if the fear has gone, to protect them like the warrior that we might have to protect them in the name of our tribe. All these thoughts, all these beliefs, all these programs that we draw boundaries and defend in the name of this loyalty and duty, to restrain and lower our capacity of what our heart desires. Rather, we close it, and you can feel that. Very simple, within every moment, to recalibrate and just take a step back, as they would say, from when you have a fight or flight reaction. Same goes with whatever stresses of the day that might lead up to it or not. Right here in this moment, how do you feel, and assess it? Did the breath go in deep enough? Were you breathing from the heart? Or where were you right now? In every breath, are you here? Do you feel your heart open? Then you're here. Or are you feeling it from somewhere else? Are you feeling pain that you can't breathe and it's limiting you? What are you oppressing yourself from not allowing your immunity, your sovereignty, to be empowered with each and every breath? So, even in this example of clutter that was mentioned here, the example of editing, sometimes the entire manuscript must reconfigure to restore into another way that, and it could use more to reinterpret rather than throw out by adding and removing bits and pieces. And sometimes, as I'm doing here with this audio-visual version of my book, that we go through it, as there would be no other way of seeing it or having someone else do it for me. In the same way as you can't have this kind of thing, there's some things that you can't have others do for you. And this is the spiritual work that we must go through. I mean, there are cheat sheets, but if your body can handle it, I know, I've been there. I've done it. And now it's happening on a collective, global, when the youth rebel. And coffee doesn't seem to do it, even though they should be resting. The educational system has them doing something else and stressing out, not getting enough sleep, and how important coffee and the adrenals and everything else that they must stay up and awake has them into certain drugs that they start experimenting with, like methamphetamines. And that is one sure way of reaching a Kundalini sample of an experience, especially if you start injecting it through your vascular system, and it just rushes up and opens your, it just goes right up. But if your heart's not open and it's just dealing with the lower mind and that reptilian brain, not even the bird brain, okay? That very limbic system, then yes, it opens you up into those that primal goddess does ascend that Kundalini experience. But then it will burn your brain out because it's a cheating, artificial, synthetic way, like similar to the vaccines with the immune system. That we already have a biological immune system that can handle everything. But the external world has this method of recreating in synthetic forms these cheat sheets. Same with falling in love with someone from the outside. Again, we have everything we need inside of us, chemically, from our endocrine system, from you name it. And so, yes, it takes a little bit of anatomy, physiology to kind of, and some biology and some kind of science background. But again, I'll leave it up to you. And with that said, I want to hear you say these words with me. Repeat them, please, and let's feel our way into a better day as we clear whatever it is that we need to acknowledge here. Maybe you can visualize each rock and what it represents to you, and just drop it. And take another rock, and what is that? Work through it by feeling it, and drop it. And so meditate on that, and as you do, say these words. I want to hear you say them. When climbing up a rocky mountain, it is most wise not to collect of all the heavy rocks along the way. There's always a membrane and a filter that the ego mind will represent, and the awakened self must realize through discernment that it grows, that it has intentions to exploit with. And always remember that figure 8, when you untwist it, you go back into the 0 point field. And back from there, the source. You can always think of it as zeros and ones, how it's been recreated in the digital world. However you want to come to terms with it. That you can allow for yourself to absorb and accept these words that I am saying to you. The self is only permitted to play with such experience when placed inside its mirrored structure. That would be the twisting, again, into that figure 8. And so, like it was mentioned in the book, you can have one on a linear time perspective, and you can also have one on this, your heart vibrational perspective. When you put them together, it starts creating a flower of life and all these other protective symbols that I guess people might even be using in Wicca, or the Freemasonry and things like that. And so these are all tools that our imaginations come up with, similar to placing spirit in an encasement that we come to know as religion. So the self can permit its experience or must have it reflect to guide it along from its external and how much it values the acknowledgement of the mirrors, to accept it, that it might be fitting in and helping others. The soul can only therefore be a mirror and moving through to the center of its many layers, where through the heart the ascension can begin. And so the self must find a way to leave the construct of its ego-driven mirrored walls, quadrants. It could be, it's still 4. And then you can split them off even more. I mean, even with your directions. North, east, south, west, northwest, northeast. And then we form geometrical patterns with that as well. We could do. And when they go into motion, they create spheres or whatever other things they will create from this energy of light. And you can say even, whatever it means to you, it's always to step off the 4th density. So the 4th density has 2 worlds to it, the lower and the higher. And when you collapse the 8, the number 8, it becomes a 4 again. So to step off the 4th density, it is to play within the unstructured formlessness, and before it re-enters into its physical geometrical matrix again, we're dealing with the ethereal. We're a place of fantasy and dragons. And think of it this way: when we go to sleep and we rest, and how important that is, and we start dreaming, and we become awakened to our dreams, and doesn't matter how well connected we are to it, then we know is this control thing, whatever it is that we think it is. But we actually, let's look at it this way. Could it be perhaps that when we close our eyes and we go to sleep and we come awakened into the dream reality, that might be the real world? And when we wake up to this, that we're in the world of death? that we're actually, uh, the other way around again. So when we remove the outer and the inner and we become one with it, we must remove all the many different boundaries and all the layers and clear that membrane into the oneness and allow the light to come into the soul. And there's no dark spaces, shadow work, anything anymore. And we become that embodiment of light. And so the self can go ahead and play within these fields of realities, the many vortexes and chakras, all it wants, yet remain unforgiven by the many that it will not commit with to the experience of agreed upon stress and to the extent of loyalty that it may expire from the physical. So where are we feeling, what realities are we feeling trapped, condensed, blocked, that we're defining? This is why forgiveness is so important. It is a given opportunity to detach, unclutch, if you will, from all of these illusions. Like we're driving, we're in the driver's seat, right? Some of us might not be. And then it gets pretty crazy when we're not. So put it in neutral, unclutch. Let it go. All that which cannot possibly conceive to why the self might anger it so much, and for no apparent reason. What are we gravitating to, or what are we allowing to become stuck by and bind ourselves into sometimes? So let it go. And throughout the day, look at all these rocks. Pick as many as you want and unpack from your knapsack so that you might lighten up. And remember to say these words. When climbing up a rocky mountain, it is most wise not to collect of all the heavy rocks along the way, and rather the ones that you have collected, we're dealing with now, that you can take them, as many as you find that you've already been carrying, not to carry more, just to realize from here on. And so integration has a way of getting through to the self, and feeling it is this process. The purpose for today is to release and let it go of all the things that refuse to acknowledge that self exists, because it will only anger them some more for no apparent reason. In doing so, a newer sensory system can emerge from boundless space. And just breathe that in for a moment. And so, from here, take 2 days to take it in. Take all of this in, including this sermon and this lesson. Congratulations for making it through to the 204th lesson. This is a rest period to take the lessons independently as a review. from the 46-week and 6-day course of 365-day program consisting of 319 lessons and 48 days of review that break up the lessons from every 6 days for a day and every other week of 13 days for 2. Take these 2 days to recalibrate, make notes, and review. So what is it that we're learning? I, for one, am learning that we come to a realization that fighting and doing and being that warrior and standing up and all these things, it's all a very delicate balance. It's all very intricately interwoven into our tapestry. And when we look at the bigger picture, maybe sometimes we need to be more of that inner nurturer to that inner child that's been so hurt and traumatized that we need to clear that emotional energy, that sacred, sacral chakra, if you will, comes together into the secondary color, and how important that is. So sometimes it's important in order to elevate to that creator being, electromagnetic, angelic presence. We must clear and go through it, this spiritual work. Thank you for joining me, and as you slowly start to come around, let's say these words again throughout the day as many times. And it's just not to think them. Maybe you can even write them down, have them in a little sticky note, and just repeat them once in a while and come back to it. And remember this here sermon and what we've all talked about and what I have shared here with you. And say these words. Take a few deep breaths, and each time take a breath before you say it. Intermittently after, again, take another breath. Take it all in so it can sink in. And leverage that out as well with your breathing. Ready? Sounds good. When climbing up a rocky mountain, it is most wise not to collect of all the heavy rocks along the way. When climbing up a rocky mountain, it is most wise not to collect of all the heavy rocks along the way. When climbing up a rocky mountain, it is most wise not to collect of all the heavy rocks along the way. Thank you for joining me here today. And like always, it has been an honor to share with you these many blessings. And I hope that you stay open to receive them. And until next time, see you on day 236 to rediscover and explore on the expansion of this depth on what is ascension.